Is absent.
They're coming.
And here he is, beautiful. Councilmember Kennedy is here, and Council President Mantello here. All right, we'll open out to the public forum. The public forum is open to speak on anything on tonight's finance agenda. Okay, the public forum for the finance agenda is closed. We'll go into local laws, which there are none. We'll go into ordinances, which there are none. We'll go into Resolution 2, bond resolution in the City of Troy, New York, authorizing the issuance of additional $300,000 in serial bonds to finance the rehabilitation of Powers Park. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Councilmember Parator, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember December. Couple things. I'd like Steve. Do you mind coming up to the podium? I know this is for an additional 300 in Andy and Monica. We had a quick conference call this past week. Steve supplied us, everyone on your desk, some numbers from a low range to a high range. What I'd like to see, I mean, this project obviously is, I think, near and dear to all of us. I'd like to try to get the 300 down of bonding. And I know we might not necessarily bond for, it's not to exceed 300. Is there any way to potentially cut this down? I'm looking at the historic fence. Can we maybe, have maybe a non-historic fence? I know we're trying to get it to the original historical integrity of the Powers Park. So maybe you could go through this and then we'll take it from there.
Is this
It should be.
Bottom on the bottom.
The
Button on the
bottom,
bottom.
unless,
it's on.
oh, okay, you know what, maybe the batteries.
I can hear you.
Okay, well, I'll talk loud. Everybody, I know everybody.
Come on up to the front of the room, everybody.
No, you're talking to us.
Don't be shy.
Okay.
You're talking to
So,
us.
the grant application was based off of the 2004 Lansingburg Village study, which had a total project cost of $762,000. Obviously, times have changed in 14 years, costs have gone up, and the application is for the historic restoration to restore Powers Park back to its historic character. So it took a long time to get this through the dormitory authority to get an approval, and that finally has happened. So now we're going to start taking out or changing things, especially the fence, to making them, a chain link fence or a aluminum extruded metal fence or something like that. That's really, I don't think, going to fly with them. Okay, so and the way the base bid was run was to take care of some of to build this park really looking at it from the outside, taking the two sides that don't have sidewalks and restoring the sidewalks, and then adding the fence, working at the north end of the park and putting the trail structure, the original trail structure, back in at the north end of the park. It's probably close to the north 2/3 of the park. And then doing some selective removal of trees, monuments, things that are in the way of that construction. So when you look at the actual extra bonding, the base bid, the low was $598,000, and the grant was $449,000 with $27,000 city funding. So you're already.
60, right?
I'm sorry?
Steve, we use 60 of the.
And we use 60 already, right? And actually, that's drawn out below on the use of funds on that, what I gave you.
Yep.
So spent to date was $60,000, and the base bid is just about $600,000. And then construction admin and a contingency, so there's a $60,000 contingency in there. And then there is some National Grid work of $16,000 that still needs to be done. And then for the extra bonding, I added in $53,000 to redo the other 2 rows of sidewalks on the outside. It could be something else, if you want it to be, but it seems like those were safety concerns and things we wanted to deal with to get it done. And then we would subtract back out $71,000 because some of this work involves CDTA work, including the the rapid transit, the BRT stop. So basically that's where that brings it back to a total of $776,000 if we bond the additional. So the bonding really only provides to get the base done, and then adds another $50,000 in for alternates. It still doesn't get everything done that we want to do in there, but it gets a lot done, and it restores the look of the park from the outside. It restores the fencing, it restores most of the trail network.
Can I provide a clarification?
Yeah,
Only because I was the one who actually applied for the grant.
I recall.
Yeah, so the numbers were adjusted when we applied for the grant for the 449. We did not include all of the pieces of the original 2004 master plan. That's why it wasn't for a total of plus $700,000. That's why it was done down to 449, because we only took pieces and parts, knowing we only had a certain dollar amount through the SAM grant, and pieces that we thought would be pertinent to doing the renovation. So just to clarify that, it was 2004 design, but with 2016 or 15 pricing at that point in time we applied for it. So just to clarify that. Okay.
And you know what, I looked at the village, the master plan from
Yep.
2005 or
Yep.
4 during Mark Patterson's term, I think it was. And their estimate included acquiring property down by CBS. It included boat launch, dollars, and some other things. That's not a part of this whatsoever.
It is not, and actually there was a specific Powers Park Phase
Right.
1 budget, which
Yes.
was the 762.
Right,
and did
right,
not
right,
include
right.
those items.
So I don't know if you guys have it. This front page of the plans actually has the original design
Yes.
from that, if you want that.
I did go online, but I'm sure others will want to see it.
That was a long way down. Sorry, Facebook.
Okay.
Council President?
Councilmember Gulley, yes.
Yeah, I think everybody's done a wonderful job, and it's a beautiful looking park on paper. And I appreciate all the work that's gone in to try to put this together. My frustration is spending an additional $300,000 on the inside of the park when it seems to be fully operable and fun for the community now. I do agree with, the fencing around the outside, creating that historic look, the outside sidewalks. I do agree with that. I would like to see that accomplished, and I don't know how much money it would take just to do those two parts, but I would like to, my own personal feeling is that I don't feel that the $300,000 additional should be spent at this time, and I think that we should be looking in a different direction. But I do agree that the fencing, the sidewalks, that piece of it seems to be a part that would make that park stand out better. But from an interior look, it's a park, and everybody loves exactly what they have now, and I think that we could suffice with what we have.
Council President,
Yeah, Councilmember Kennedy.
2 points, Councilman. Just, are we bound by the historic design based on the grant guidelines and the receipt or award of the grant?
Well, that is what it is the award is based on the restoration of the park to reflect its original conditions. So as we start pulling items out, changing things, we're gonna have to go back to the Dormitory Authority of New York. It took forever to get us to this point. It'll probably lose us another season. It will probably cost us an additional amount of funding. I mean, those are the realities of it. We've got $450,000 of other people's money right now that it would be, or the state's money, that it would be nice to put to use, and I understand everybody's concern about that. But I'm sure it will delay, if we're gonna significantly change the project, it's gonna significantly delay it and increase costs.
Council President.
Yes, Councilmember Perator and then Councilmember Morel.
Steve, I think we all appreciate the plan and all the work that went into it. Do you see any way we can get this number down and still get the state money?
I'm really at a loss for how to do it. We could maybe, I don't know, it's gonna, it's gonna require us to go back to the state to do any serious reconfiguration of it. I don't think we're gonna get much better numbers if we, I mean, to repackage it, to go out to bid again, the numbers aren't gonna change significantly. And, again, it's gonna, any major change in scope is gonna, even after the design was completed, in the summer of 2017, it took us till the fall of 2018 to get the dormitory authority to give us the go-ahead.
Thank you.
Councilmember McGrath.
Yeah. Hello. Okay. Well, being the RFPs are out, these are RFPs, the chances of this being done this year are remote, as a reasonable person would understand. With that said, I would suggest, and because it's not, listen, I agree with Councilman Gully, I live there, and I know what the park is used for every day. And I don't want to bust people's bubble, but I know what people do in that park every day, okay? And I'm not, criticizing them, it's just, it is what it is. Now, I would suggest you take this back and work to get this on budget, or if need be, slightly above budget, but, as it stands right now, the park is a nice place. It serves its purpose. Would I like to see the fencing all around it? Yeah. Do I need to see sidewalks on the 3rd Avenue side that have never been there? No. Do I need to see these entrances on the south side at $33,000? No. I don't know where our priorities are. I understand we have to match the historic grant, and it has to be used, but the fencing, I think, is big, and I agree with it. But I would suggest this goes back, because to me, this is unacceptable. I couldn't vote for this as it stands right now. That is my suggestion, that's all.
Councilmember Cummings.
Can I understand the timeline on this in terms of when do you hope to break ground if everything went well?
Well, if this came on budget right now, we would anticipate starting immediately when the snow is gone, April.
April-ish,
Right.
okay. So we can have a couple months to work on this. I guess this is coming towards us right now because of bonding timelines.
It's basically it's bonding timelines.
But as long as the bonding is authorized by the time construction starts, I imagine it won't need to be issued until, we could probably wait until the September issuance.
Again, I mean, if you want to hold this up, I'm sure it's only construct. Sorry.
It would depend on the budget and when they need money.
Sure.
Right. So
There's $500,000 already authorized.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, again, it'll be, in order to rebid this, we're gonna have to, it'll not happen this year most likely. It'll require us to go back to the dormitory authority.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not ready to say a hard no on this, but it's too much to say, yeah, definitely. It's too much to give a couple $100,000. Because it's true, I went up and walked around today, and it's a pretty functional park. Obviously, there's lots of improvement that can be made. I don't know, are there plans for lighting improvements? Is that part of the
Not within the park.
National Grid?
No, not within the park. There's electrical upgrades, there's replacing the stage with a new concrete stage.
Well,
Councilmember McGrath.
there are lanterns, there's lantern lights in the
Right.
park that are
There are two.
historical.
I think those are alternates to replace those though.
The stage, why? It's not tangled, there's a completely functional stage there right now that is, for what it's used for, I don't know. We're just throwing, I'm sorry, I won't say no.
Councilmember Kennedy.
My only comment to your point, I understand it may be a functional park right now, but in order to create parks within our city that are actually destinations. This one can be based on the success of the Powers Park concert series and other potential uses for it. I think that those factors need to be taken into account when we're looking at how we're investing and how we want to use these in the future, especially in a high-need neighborhood where there could be significant development and other revitalization efforts. These kind of projects can help revitalize neighborhoods by dumping this money, and it'll have the ripple effect throughout the neighborhood. We can't just look at it as a on its face, dumping the money directly into the park. You're dumping the $300,000 into a neighborhood, and it has the effect on the surrounding neighborhood and the property values and everything else, especially along these major arterials. We want to support improvements to the CDTA transit routes. It's all connected, and I think we can't just look at it as we're just dumping money into a park. It's really much more than that.
Chair.
Yeah, Councilmember Gully and
Go ahead, if you'd like
Steve.
to
No, I was
go
just gonna
ahead.
say, it does provide a significant upgrade to the walkability of the area, 2 sidewalks in areas where we don't have sidewalks already, so you have to look at it. Those are things we'll need to be doing in the future, replacing the sidewalks. And it does just improve the walkability, the livability, and the character of the neighborhood.
Councilmember Gully.
Steve, with the grant that we received, when they say historical restoration and you list 8 or 9 things and they give you $450,000 to accomplish that goal, you're not necessarily bound to all of those pieces of the restoration. You can spend up to the $450,000 on that restoration, like if you did the fence and the walks, but you didn't do the inside, they wouldn't ask for money back on that, would they? Because we're using the funds toward the restoration, and we're hitting our match that we need.
But they have approved plan, so that's the question. If we start pulling elements out of it, we don't know what they're gonna want to let us do. I can't just start taking items out of it for an already approved plan.
But Steve.
Can we find out?
Yeah.
Excuse me, can we find out? Is there a way to find out what their obligations are, or what our obligations would be with that grant?
Yes, we can. We can. It'll take some time, so we can. We've done some outreach to them already based on the fact that this is coming over budget, but it's taking time to get responses.
So my final thought would be that we're investing a lot of bonded money for our city pools, which are very important. And I know we don't really know quite where we stand with the Knickerbocker ice rink yet, but I just think that we have to pick and choose our battles, and I just think that adding another $300,000 bond into the pile to rehab the park extensively in the inside is not necessary at this point. Would I like to see it in the future? Absolutely. I think Councilman Kennedy bring up a great point. But I think that timing has to be right too. And we just went through a lot of sessions of putting out bonded money or approving bonded money, and I just think this is one that we can hold on. I just think that the park is sufficient and working. I'd like to see the fence. I'd love to see that close up on the 3rd Ave side. I would like to see the sidewalk on the 3rd Avenue side just to complete the aesthetics of the park. But I'd like to try to keep it to a minimal, and I'd like to work on that.
Council President?
Yeah,
Just one
if I
last
may, I agree with you, Councilmember Kennedy, in terms of the domino impact on the neighborhood. I just don't want to see the 300 figure, because you're talking about a 496 grant, and the match would essentially be like a 70% match by the city. So if we can bring down that 300, I'm open for discussion. Councilmember Kennedy.
Yeah, I just wanted to build on my point. When you're considering future development and how people either from inside the community or outside the community are going to look at where they're going to invest their money, they see us, investing $300,000 into this park in this neighborhood. A $300,000 plus investment from the private sector could easily offset whatever taxpayer burden is could potentially put on us in long-term payments. We're paying this for the life, over the life of the usability of the park. I don't see this as an immediate burden to taxpayers, and I think the potential investment in the neighborhood and what the domino effect could be would easily offset what our investment would be.
And I would add in, it's gonna, the 300,000 would make this probably about an equivalent, and I can't do the math in my head that quick, but about a 30 to 35% match. And most of the parks grants that come out here now are, they're 50% matches. So we're still doing better than a typical parks grant with the bonding. I understand the concern, but
Further discussion?
Yeah, just.
Councilmember
Council
McGrath.
President, I live about 6 blocks from the park. I know it's good to say, well, and then our investment, we need to invest, it seems like you're having a pretty easy time spending other people's money, first of all, okay? And with that said,
Investing.
I have to question our priorities here as a city. I'm as frustrated. We have security cameras throughout the city that aren't working. And here we are talking about investing in a park that's already being used and is not used for sports. It's an ornamental park, is what it's listed as. Again, I'm not going to argue this point all night, but to sit and listen to, it's a great investment. I live there. The people that use the park the most are about a dozen people that, sit in the afternoon, late in the afternoon, sip on their beers, and it's fine. But other than that, you have maybe in the spring some really young kids, 5-year-olds, practicing soccer in the middle of and that's going to be gone because they're putting a walkway in the middle. And then you have what? 6 concerts? 6 concerts. 8 concerts. So, people need to really take a look at what our priorities are here as a city, in my opinion, okay?
Well, how would the council feel if, we table this? I'm just throwing it out there, and I haven't made a motion yet, but maybe your thoughts on tabling and asking Monica and Steve to kind of go back with Andy, work out the numbers, bring this 300 down somewhere. I understand the plan went to DASNY. I guess the big question, when the bids went out though, it didn't go out for, say, 750. We looked at it as maybe roughly 500. So when those plans were submitted, it had to be based on, some factual numbers of 500. So do you know what I'm saying?
yeah, well, I think that is why we pulled out a lot of the alternates in there, because we figured we could get the base down and have the alternate there, and if it came in lower. So we did have concerns about the amount that was in the grant and what could be done with that amount.
Would the council member Kennedy?
I just have one more point.
Yep.
A question for the members that represent Lansingburg. Do you believe the park is being fully utilized or underutilized?
Utilized.
Councilmember
Is it
Gully.
being is it underutilized?
I was just waiting to be recognized.
Oh, that's fine. Councilmember Gully.
Here's what I will say, the park is being utilized as much as I think the park will be utilized, but I think that and I will say this, by putting the walkways in there, I think we're gonna deter a lot of the use that we see there now. You go up there in April and May, you'll see 4 to 5 T-ball and Little League teams practicing in there. You'll see the soccer kids in the middle on the other side. You'll see the 2 families that always sit at the tables, sitting at the tables, as they do. In the summer, every Saturday, the park is packed with people for the concerts. During the week, it's your guys out there throwing the ball to their dog and running across the place, and God forbid they run across a couple of those $400 plants. I just think,
Yeah.
Councilman Kennedy, to be honest with you, I think the park has a good fit as a park, and I realize I'd love to see it dressed up like this, but I think that timing is everything, and right now I don't think its timing is right to spend that type of money additional, over 700,000 total, almost 800,000 total on the park at this point. And I just think that we can do well this year with it, we can find out some answers, and let's bring that down into a point where it would make a little better sense and the timing would be better. That would be my thought.
And Chair, one more
Some
question
good
for,
feedback, Councilmember Kennedy.
one more question for the commissioner. If this, was the grant award based on the plan as is? It's like if we adjust the plan, does that
Well, the grant was.
put the grant at risk?
The actual, yeah, in the end, yes, it was based on the grant that was, I mean, we had to design it, but it was basically, the intent was, like I said, 5 times already, based on returning it to what it was historically, how it was built.
Council President?
Councilmember Bissonnette.
And so to that point, what would this do if we tabled, reevaluated? How far would that push us back? Would we still be able to acquire these funds? And just for the record, I tend to agree with Councilmember Kennedy. I think we do need to be doing more to invest in our parks. And I have a concern that that this could be a missed opportunity.
And again, it'll have to go to, not only to the dormitory authority, but I believe this then goes to 2 different state departments for review as well. So it's not just the dormitory authority, it has to be signed up on several levels at the state. So it'll slow it down if we're gonna be changing this significantly.
And if I may, to slow it down to what extent? So we were talking maybe April, we could get started. What would that difference look like? In your best
In my
understanding.
I would hate to give you a best estimate and put a year on the end of it, just because of what I've seen so far to get to this one. Like I said, it took over a year to get approval once we had a design. So,
Councilmember Kennedy.
Are the walkways inside the park intended to be concrete?
they are stone.
Limestone?
Limestone.
Could we change the limestone maybe? I mean, to a more modest, like, I don't think any of us are disagreeing that the park's very valuable, sprucing it up could domino into more economic development, I totally agree. But if somehow we could bring back, bring it to a little more modest level, and
And
again,
again, that's how it was
Right.
historically built. I think your linear foot charge change on that is probably not gonna make a substantial difference. I think the fencing
The
is probably
fencing
one of the
would be
big,
big.
one of the big
Yeah.
costs.
That's what I was like.
could we maybe scale down, maybe the fencing somewhat to still have the historical
I think the
aesthetic
fencing is
look?
probably,
That's the
in my opinion, one of the most significant
It's
pieces.
the wrought iron.
Yeah.
Council President.
Yes,
Just,
Councilmember McGrath.
just to, again, what Council Goey said and about, the T-ball practicing, that's all gonna come to an end, because once they put the limestone down in the walkways inside the park, then it takes away the small
Well,
area.
there's still the
Only
southern-
small area, it's a small, let me explain this.
Yeah.
It is a small ornamental park. It is
Yeah.
not a park that you can build a baseball field, a football
Yeah,
field, anything like that.
I've been there.
These have to be kids
Yes.
5, 6 years old.
Yeah.
So you'll be taking that away with the walkways.
Wasn't
We have
that, hold on now, wasn't that discussed in the focus meetings?
Well, it was
about
designed, historically as a passive park. I remember reading something about somebody doing some athletics in there at the turn of the century and getting a ticket or something and being
No laws
reprimanded.
allowed either.
Council President, just one quick question
Councilmember
for
Bissonnette.
Councilmember McGrath. So size-wise, I'm not as familiar up there. Are we looking at, like, we have Washington Park in my
It's
district?
similar to
Same
Washington,
size?
same
Okay.
size.
Same
Thank you.
exact thing.
So a
Yep.
couple things. Yes, we have 112th Street Park, which is literally a half a block away, right? So we have improvements going to 112th Street Park, which hopefully will act as more of an active park
Right.
versus more. And we also have to
Needs
remember
to
too, that the donation of this land to the city was for a memorial park. So that, going back to that 2004 study, that's what it was designed around, it being a memorial park. And that's why you see that circular piece. Those were chambers at one point in time, so areas of respite. You gotta think about like the Victorian age, right? So, as far as the administration, I just spoke with Andy, I'm okay to table this, or even pull it if we need to, go back to the drawing board a little bit, take a look, have a conversation with DASNY, see if we can restructure it a little bit. I really wanna get to DASNY. What I do wanna say is we did have public meetings on this at the Lansingburg meeting, we publicized it. We just wanna make sure that, we have this investment in Lansingburg, we wanna do it. But I think it's, you know, obviously from what I'm hearing from you guys, you know, it's something that you want us to take back to the drawing board and take a look at. We wanted to get it to you now, bonding, we have to issue estoppels in the next couple days, so